Okay. So first, do we want to discuss the doohickey that was? That was
Well, that was unfortunate. I thought that it was supposed to. So my intention, I thought we'd just like take turns writing each one because there's like 4 or 5 due, but I didn't realize that there was supposed to be 8 to 10 pages. I don't think any of us did, I guess, because like it was the instructions said nothing about the length, but I happened to like find where it said that in some like last week's announcement. So I was like, dumb. But I thought it would have been more useful to have it in a more relevant place. But anyway, so that sucked. But this time we'll get it right this time.
yeah. Undoubtedly, we need to streamline that and make sure everybody does their equal part, and yeah, maybe get an earlier start on that.
Yeah, that'd make a big difference. But yeah, the way I found an example, the way she found an example that she had written, the teacher, I guess, or someone else, and the way it's set up would be really easy for everybody to do. You just take one section or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, man. Thanks for
Yeah. Well, I did that to myself because I suggested it that, so whatever. It's all good. Hopefully, we get a good enough grade on it.
yeah, trying to make sure to do much more next. All
Yeah.
right, so here we go. So the first question is, if you were a hiring manager, what would you have done? So, just one second.
So is this you, Allison?
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. It's good to have you here.
Do you see those questions, Joshua?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Ooh. What, wait. So, one second. Okay. Let's see. Gonna want to tab up here. So Lane's here. All right, so Ryan, let's start with you. If you were a manager at Super Saturday, which two candidates of the four would you have chosen and why?
It's a tough question. I would say I did like the let's see. I like the one lady, Natalia, I guess that's her name. The first one. Um, she had a lot of experience. She had really good finance skills and um, really a lot of culture. She spoke several different languages. Um, I think that as far as she was very most diverse candidate, it sounded like. So it sounded to me like they needed diversity and she had really good finance background. So that's probably why I would pick her. And then I like the Ken Goldstein. He also had like a buttload of experience and seemed like a really good candidate. Everybody really liked him. The only down part was that he had like a family, and they were worried about that he wouldn't be able to give it 110%. But other than that, he sounded like he would probably be one of the best candidates because of all of his because he had worked at another corporation like theirs for 5 years, so he was like perfect for the job, minus his family, I guess. But
Okay.
so those would be mine too.
Okay. And Lane?
That's Allison.
Allison Lane? Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. So which two of the candidates would you have chosen?
I would go with Ken, which is the one we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
He's perfect other than his family life. But he has previous experience, so we obviously like figured out how to balance his life. And the other one I think would be Andy, because he was more of an entrepreneur, and it said earlier that it like changes the game if the guys have an entrepreneur mindset. And that their only concern was that he had great grades.
Right.
But I mean, in my opinion, grades aren't that big of a deal because there's plenty of people that can get 4.0s that can't work. So I think that they should give him a shot.
Okay. So yours were Andy and Ken?
Yeah.
And what about you, Kyle?
I like the Natalia. Is that what it was that we talked about? Kind of the same one that Ryan did. I just liked hers because where she has, if I was looking at this, she's got a strong, financial background and analytics wise. And then probably then the next person I would pick would be Kent as well. Yeah, he's got a lot of experience. He seems to be a little bit more mature and things like that. So I think that those are the two that I would choose, or it'd be a toss-up between. The one thing that I did like about Andy, though, that everyone said he was enthusiastic and personable, which would probably be a really good thing if you're trying to get finances or stuff from a bank. So, but if I was to put out the top two, like I said, it would be Natalia and then Ken, then Andy. So.
Okay, cool. So my choices were Andy, and the reason why was for the same reason that Allison said. His GPA, his low GPA, is somewhat negligible. I don't know if any of you, well, maybe not, taken psychological assessment, but in that class we learned that many of the so-called standard measurements of one's success, like GPA and GRE, the predicative value is actually quite minimal. I think it accounts for about 22% of the variance, or something to that effect. So interestingly, we place high value to these sorts of things, but they really don't predict as much as people would like to think, or applications. So I think indeed his entrepreneurial ability was far more impressive than his GPA. I think maybe about 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 people are capable of getting a 4.0 or 3.9. But how many people in their 20s are able to start a multi-million-dollar business? I think it's markedly lower. And the other choice was Ken. And the reason why is because I think there's quite a difference between a fit of culture and diversity. Ken, I don't think there's any indication that he wouldn't fit the culture. He simply is diverse in that he is a little bit of an outsider. And I don't think any of us chose Martin.
No, I don't think so.
So why wouldn't you guys have chosen Martin?
other people measured up higher than he did. So
Yeah, he didn't have a lot of experience in the field. Said he had great leadership experience, but not a lot of. To me, I didn't choose him because he just didn't have a lot of experience that they were looking for.
Right. And his drive wasn't all there.
Yeah.
I was watching an interview with some executive at Apple. It wasn't Steve Jobs or Tim Cook, but it was a hiring official. And he said that very often he would get these candidates and he would present them the newest project. And if their eyes lit up, they that was a very strong indicator that they would fit the culture and that they were on the same page and at the same level of enthusiasm for the products. If they kind of glazed over, then that would be held against them quite a lot. So, what other information that was not provided would you have found useful in making a decision?
Sorry, repeat that.
What information that was not provided would you have thought would have been useful? Would you have found useful? Was there any missing information that you would have liked?
Maybe like where they were from. I don't know if it makes that big of a difference, but he was saying like if people are willing to make the move to New York or if they fit that culture. That's just where you're from is kind of an indicator, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with Allison. I'd want to know more about like their personal life just to gauge on what kind of person they are, like what they enjoy doing, what their family life, their family's like. I don't know. Yeah, you just see how well they would, because you want like their expertise and experience is good, but if they're not going to blend well with the rest of your employees or their managers or clients, they're not going to be a good candidate either.
All right.
I agree upon those things as well. I grew up here in Whitesburg, Idaho, and I serve in one of the largest cities in the United States for my mission, and there's times where I felt very uncomfortable with it. So, but yeah, I think finding out places where they're from and where their family's life is like, so more personal questions would help.
Right. Yeah.
Or another question would be, maybe they asked this. I don't think so, but why they want to work, like why they want to work for whatever that company was called.
All right.
Oh yeah, CS Cowan or CG Cowan or whatever it is. Like why they want to work there so bad? Like what about that company that has drawn their attention?
Mm-hmm.
Have any of you had a group interview?
I have never had a group interview. No.
Yes.
Yeah. I came in for an interview once that I expected to be a single interview, a one-on-one interview. It ended up being a group interview.
That'd be awkward.
Yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking. Do you suppose that maybe one of the reasons for group interviews is to see how you can get along with them collectively, like in a
Well, it shows
people?
It shows a way that you can communicate with other people at the same time. Since you're in the group, they ask the questions and they kind of give each other's perspective, and they can actually build upon each other. And so they're able to see if someone in there is like, well, I don't agree with the things they do, and like they attack them in certain ways. You obviously know they're not going to be a good team leader or be able to work good in groups or anything like that. So I think it's a good thing if they're going to be working in groups and working in settings like that. It kind of really puts it out there. Are they comfortable around other people?
Okay. All right. So we kind of touched on this. The next step is go through each of the candidates and say why you would and would not hire them, the highlights and the drawbacks. So for Natalia, she seemed to be quite smart, and she spoke many languages, which is obviously an asset. What I was kind of concerned about is how well she would fit in with the culture of the organization. What do you guys think?
Yeah, reading about her kind of made her sound like a robot
Yeah.
and like what everyone said about her. So I don't know. That's why she wasn't my pick. She just sounded really unpersonable.
Didn't they say that, was it her or was it someone else that they had like her language barrier? It wasn't
Yeah, that was her.
really a hindrance, but it seemed like it did have a little bit of effect.
Yeah, I think that was her.
Okay.
Yeah, it said she's sucked at small talk and
Mhm.
stuff too, so yeah, it's a huge downfall.
Martin Street. So we talked about his leadership ability, but also about his lack of,
Innovation.
yeah, right.
Wait, was he? Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
I think he's kind of the typecast for the type of individual that normally would do well on interviews because he's charismatic and has strong leadership abilities. So to an indiscerning interviewer, he would seem like a pretty ideal candidate. But we know that interviewers are often fallible and they should use other assessments. That's my take. All right. Ken?
Yeah, I think just the biggest thing would be the family. I guess that they're looking for someone that just dedicates, every waking second of their life to the company, and worried that Ken wouldn't be able to do that because he'd want to leave early to go like pick his kid up from school or soccer game or whatever. Which I can understand that, but like if that guy doesn't care about his family, then whatever. That's his choice, I guess.
And finally for Andy, I actually forgot to mention something about him. He did lie, didn't he? So he said that his GPA was 3.1 when really it was 2.8.
Oh yeah, what did he say about that?
Right.
No, his undergrad was 2.8. I thought the same thing too.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, I see that. All right.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, something about grade inflation. So it.
Okay. So I think we have a pretty good.
Yeah, it's just the low grades on that guy. Which, like, I understand grades aren't the most important, but like if he's got a C average, I definitely want to know why. Like, yeah, sure, grades aren't that important, but like, why are you getting C's though?
Right.
Is that? I mean, that's kind of bad.
And typically, what they look for is high GPA under their certain classes, which would demonstrate that they have a particular passion for those classes. And perhaps if they lag in others, that may not be as worrisome.
Right. Yeah, that was why I didn't pick him. I was just like, yeah, like I can understand like a 3.5 or something, but like that's pretty low to be. Yeah, when you're supposed to be really passionate and at a high school, like those big of schools. So.
And finally, for the information that you would want from them, how would you go about obtaining it? You're in an interview and you want to know something about them. How would you go about it?
Well, I've been in pretty serious interviews, and they're just like super straightforward.
Yeah.
They kind of drill you, which sucks and isn't fun. But I mean, they're looking for the best candidate, so I'd want someone that can defend themselves and know how to defend themselves. So I just straight up ask them.
Yeah.
Sure, ask them.
Gives them less amount of time to make something else up or to beat around the bush. So just might as well get it over.
Okay. That's interesting. I think Hmm. Let's see. I know this is talked about in the literature, but a standardized question would be kind of helpful because it would better enable you to measure each one or compare them rather. So I think I would give each one at least one question that is standardized. Everybody gets a question. That would enable me to to compare them.
Yeah, that's a good point. A few standardized questions, and then you can dive deeper in them. Like, for instance, I would just be like, "Why?" I'm like, "So I see you have a 2.8 GPA. Like, what's the reason? Like, what's the reason for that?" And because he knows it's low, so
So why was there so much disagreement between the senior bankers in the Saturday meeting? Is it partly because of the interview process? What do you guys think?
I I think so. Like you just mentioned, standardized questions. I'm not. Maybe I didn't quite catch that in the reading, but it didn't sound like there was a lot of standardized questions that all the interviewers were asking. So, correct me if I'm wrong about that. But if there had been more standardized questions, they all would have been asking the same thing and getting the same answers.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
and like depending on what point in the day, the interview would be better or worse. Like the first couple probably weren't that great, and the end ones probably weren't that great. So if you had someone in there, beginning they're nervous and they're tired of it. So if they hit people like in their prime moments or whatever, they probably got the best interview.
That's a good point.
Didn't we talk about a little bit that they're a little bit afraid that the reputation is on the line, some of them, because they were the ones that were giving the input about whether to hire the person or not. And so they wanted to make sure that they were getting the correct candidate.
Yeah, I think that was wasn't that like the recruiters or something?
Was that the recruiters?
I think it was the recruiters that were bringing the people to Super Saturday.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
And without clearly defined criterion, not two things need to be clearly defined as it seems. It seems one of them is the criteria that for the position, what skills and abilities do they need to have, as well as the procedures for interviewing. When both of these things are subjective, you're never going to have anybody agree. Well, roughly speaking. So those two things were, well, principally the interview process was absent, the standardized procedure. So.
Yeah.
So is there a better way to learn about the candidates than traditional interviews? What else can you think of that might be helpful other than the traditional interview?
Well, they did have, like at the beginning, they had like a cocktail something or another.
Right.
Yeah, party. I think stuff like that, just where it's a little more, it's less formal, like more informal, that they can have like a lunch or like a golf scramble or something. That's like business people do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'd want just a more informal thing that I could really just get to know someone and ask them questions and where they're not so nervous.
Right.
And I don't know if it's possible in the banking industry, but in some jobs, I've had people ask for like a test of my ability. I'm a graphic designer, so it makes a lot more sense. Like do a demo, but if there was any way they could be like, figure this out, and what would you do with this problem?
Right.
And give them the time, not like an on the spot interview thing, because that's always awful.
Yeah.
But like the night before or whatever, give them some time to think about it, see how they would handle certain situations or something like that.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I've had friends that done that exact same thing that Allison just described, where they get to a certain, well, they first get chosen to be interviewed, but before they do it, they're given a problem equation or something like that, or they're given something where they have to put their skills to the test, and they're able to figure out and solve the problems based upon their knowledge. And it's been something that's been my friends have used, and it took them like weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks to finally finish and then send it in, and they ended up getting hired. But I think that's one good thing to do, or just talking with them and asking them personal questions as well. I think it's another good way to figure out how well of a good worker they are, or how dedicated they are. So.
Yeah. That makes me think of Elon Musk. Apparently he has this question that he likes to ask prospective employees. Maybe I can find it super quick.
We are kind of running short on time too.
Okay, well, it's just about it's just a brain teaser really that demonstrates their ability, just like you guys were saying. He likes it on time for a very quick assessment of one's ability, so he asks us that question, and that's what he uses. And also, it appears that the highest echelons of business, CEOs and the like, it's not necessarily formal, but rather, as Ryan was saying, informal. They like to golf and maybe have dinner. It's more like an establishment of relationships because they understand just how important it is to have meaningful relationships in life. So, what are the criteria for choosing candidates at CG Cohen? What are the criteria for choosing candidates? What do they want?
What is their criteria?
Yeah, what were their specific criterion?
Can't remember.
Like any company, they wanted a nice goodness of fit, of culture.
Oh yeah, culture is important.
And they really wanted the best of the best. As part of that, they discovered that the very best, say at the Ivy Leagues, the top 10 schools, they outsource to others, the very best of the top 50 instead of the mediocre of the top 10. Can you guys think of anything else?
Let's see, the schools.
Can't they say they want to be like top 15 to 25? At the top 10, they got a lot of people that were qualified but weren't interested in it or weren't something like that. I think that goes upon what other people are saying about how not their GPA really, or the performance was not the GPA of the classes didn't really show much, but what they actually had to offer at the other schools.
Right. And they also discussed how there was, I think the terminology is an outsider, or just kind of like an oddball, diamond in the rough, somebody you wouldn't expect. Terribly great candidate, but they still fit. So they also look for those as well.
Yeah, they look for people that like dress the most appropriately. Like if they weren't dressed the way they should have, and like an alarm went off, or if they would ask questions that were like right here it says, "Are the hours really that bad?" like that should they had some sort of like ego or whatever, then that was a huge red flag. So they just wanted someone that really just fit with the company's standards.
Yeah, pretty commonsensical type things.
Yeah.
Do they have common sense and the like? Okay. So how do these senior bankers know what they're looking for in a candidate? And how could this be improved on? How do they know what they're looking for? Why they're looking for it? And how can that be improved on?
They have they obviously have the banking experience. They've dealt with the situations, and they've probably seen other candidates or employees that have been hired, and maybe they weren't, a little bit stubborn in certain ways, or they were trained a certain way, and it made it very catastrophic or very hard for the company to work with them. Or it could be, other things that I think of, then they're able to also see the ones that are like, oh, this guy's actually really willing to learn. He's willing to understand, or they're teachable. I think that's something just from their experience that they're able to see that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can really base everything off of that, of course, because, as technology changes and ideas and information change, so will the improvement of life. So maybe the old people don't really know the real advances and stuff that they could be doing. Works both ways.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. They know what they want. They've been working in their career, and these criteria are specific to that corporate culture and requirement. And also, like what Kyle was saying, I think this may be a disadvantage if they take their subjectivity, their own experiences, too far, and they don't, and they disregard standard procedures. Anything else?
Yeah, pretty much. I agree with all that. Ask the question one more time.
How do the senior bankers know what they are supposed to be looking for in a candidate, and how could this process be approved on?
Oh, right. Yeah, I don't know. I agree with what you guys said. I can't really think of anything else.
All right. Okay. Allison? Yeah, we're good.
No.
So, I think we already covered this. The business schools were controversial. Why was the choice of which schools to recruit at so important to C.J. Cohen?
I think it was based upon where he said that they would find the most qualified ones at the top side schools as far as understanding and skills that were taught, but they weren't necessarily willing to work. So I think that's what they're talking about. They found that the lower schools, like between 15 and 25, had better, much more rounded, qualified candidates than the top. If I did that right.
Right. So would it make sense for the company to recruit from other graduate programs like law or technology? Why or why not? In the reading, it says that the CEO himself, wasn't he the lawyer before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently, there's a fair amount of generalizability. If you're smart and you know some of the basics, you should be able to generalize that to other fields. What do you guys think?
Right. I think it's just their passion. I mean, it doesn't matter. As long as they're like passionate and have a burning desire to succeed in the banking business now, I mean, I think that's what matters.
Right on.
The only thing against that is that at the beginning it said they already had, or maybe not the beginning, somewhere in it said they already had too many candidates. Like, they have to go through so many already, so I don't know why they would broaden their search.
That's a good point.
So what are the pros and cons of C.J. Cohen's approach and recruiting on campus? Pros and cons.
They find the best candidates during the time, the most grounded ones. The cons are that they don't really get a more broad, I don't know what I'm trying to say, a more wide open perspective and not more culturized, I would say. Culturized is in the fields of education, like the business, the law, not just finance and other stuff like that. that's what the cons are.
Yeah. And like Allison said, they're kind of like making more work for themselves because they already have a lot of candidates, and they're just we broaden it. You're making more candidates. That's just more interviews, more stuff like that. But so that's definitely a downside. But I also agree with Kyle too, meaning that the farther and wider you search, the more and more talent that you're gonna find. So.
Mm-hmm. Do you suppose that the reason that they kind of keep it in-house though is because they tend to have more interests and the culture therefore would be a bit more cohesive?
Yeah, I agree with that. That and also just with people knowing that they're gonna, if they work really hard, they're gonna be promoted. That's they're gonna get a lot better candidates. Those first year associate people are gonna work really hard for their first 3 years because they know they're gonna get promoted. So.
Right. So why are the associates the best people to send to campuses for recruiting? What about saving money and getting a more uniform by sending recruiters from the HR department?
Well, it said in the reading that those new first year associates or whatever, they're younger, they're more intact with I guess the students because they were students not too long ago. This HR, they can't really relate with the students or really know what to look for because these new recruits were in their position not too long ago, so they know what to look for.
Yeah. I also think that if I don't know, when I go talk to someone about their job, I want to talk to the people that I'll be doing the same job similar to. If I was to go there and talk to HR, like trying to recruit me and all that, it's like, well, I don't want to be in HR. What can you tell me about this other positions? And they'll be like, well, it's this and that. And you don't really get a personal opinion from it. So I think it's better to have the people that are, I think it's better to have those the way that they have it. So,
yeah. Yeah, HR has no experience in the actual field. They just kind of probably read what the job description is.
yeah.
From the other reading, I was pretty surprised by how much predictive value other peers have on the success. You were 14% of the time they correctly predicted that they would be successful, and then so I didn't quite understand how much knowledge or perspicacity peers have on the success of the people that they work with.
Yeah, right.
So what about sending more senior bankers instead of HR department? What differences would that have had?
Senior bankers would give you a perspective of where you can end up at, not like in the future, like what promotions and stuff you can get in the future, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think it'd still be better than HR, but because they do have the experience. But to send those
Ultimately,
people, yeah. But they also are probably really busy, so you're like taking them away from their work to do that. And they are out of the game a little bit. They're quite a bit older, so they're not most likely. They probably don't relate as well, but
yeah.
Younger associates.
Right. And maybe that would even be more scary. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be way intimidating.
But if they're high-profile employees, maybe that wouldn't matter. They should be rock solid no matter what.
Yeah. We lost Allison.
Ooh. Do you guys? It asks, what do you think of the self-selection process? I'm not too sure if I know what that is.
I'm not sure I know what that is either.
Is that either?
You said the self-selection process?
Yeah.
I honestly have no idea.
I think that's when a job is advertised and people take it upon themselves to traditionally submit a resume and then they themselves or promote themselves for the position.
Oh yeah.
So, so what do you think are some of the benefits of that? I think most obviously those who are the most assertive, get the jobs because they're the ones that applied for it. But
Yeah. Gosh, that was sad.
Yeah, I have to. I'm going somewhere right now, but keep going.
that's cool.
Yeah, I would say if that would definitely. I agree with you. Definitely. Pick out the ones, weed out the ones that are extremely interested, and then just so interested.
It also says that again, those who are charismatic and able to present themselves well, there's a disproportionate amount of value given to them. So in this case, that would be exacerbated.
Right.
Allison, please tell me. That's the next question. What types of people will most likely self-select?
What?
What types of people will self-select? Typically,
What does that mean?
I do believe it means people who see a posting for a job and they apply for it. They promote themselves for a
So
job.
instead of being recruited, they're out seeking it themselves.
I don't know. Like obviously, like go-getters.
Oh, wow, she cutting off?
Looks like she froze.
I think it's a positive thing on both. I think it could be a positive or a negative thing. Positively, it means that they really do want the job. They really want to try. The negative impact that it could pose is basically, they're not qualified for it technically. They may just want it, but they're not qualified to do it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. So what are the objectives of Super Saturday?
Sounds like the objectives were to bust through a crap load of interviews and I don't know, weed through as many candidates as possible in a short amount of time.
Right.
That's what I got from it.
Right. And what were the pros and cons of that?
Cons would be that you don't get to. I feel like each candidate is really limited on what they can present and prove about themselves. You know, they might be really bad at interviewing because they're nervous, but you get them in the job or whatever, and maybe they have a lot of skills that they couldn't show in the interview. But a pro is that you're able to find the cream of the crop really easily because they stand out with their initial I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but initially, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also efficient. And oftentimes corporations, they prolong hiring processes and there's a position open for many months and they don't quite know how long they should be seeking for one. With that Super Saturday, it's just one day. And then, yeah, they choose.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I interviewed for one internship, and it was literally 6 interviews spread out over several weeks, and I'm like, that was just so stupid. It was like a waste of everybody's time.
Right.
Especially because I didn't get it. So I'm like, well, I'm glad I wasted all that time.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, I agree with kind of what Ryan was saying as well. You know, it does help you find out, you know, the best of the best. You know, but at the same time, I had a friend that did one of these big interview type of thing, the big group one, and he's like 23 years old, and he was interviewing against all these people that were like in their 60s and 50s and 40s. He said it was very intimidating and completely doubted himself a lot of the times. Luckily, he was able to pull himself out, you know, present perfectly. But anyways,
Did you get the job?
he did get the job.
Nice. Okay,
But yeah, it put him on that stress and all that.
nice. Rewinding down here, some of the questions are just kind of almost repetitive. So,
People are here.
Get to the good ones.
what kind of information did CG Cohen gain from candidates during this process?
And then
What is Kyle doing?
No.
interview.
Just picking up some stranger. What did they gain from this interview process? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Well, they were obviously able to identify the top 4 or 5 or whatever candidates that was. 1, 2, 3, 4 candidates. So they all seemed really good. So let's just say, yeah, they weeded through the okay and found the top ones, I guess.
All right. And what could have been done to better structuralize the process?
They could have maybe placed it out over 2 or 3 days and had them not meet so long. Like Allison brought up earlier, you know, like what the guys, the interviewers or the people could have been, you know, fatigued. They could have been stressed. They could have been angry at certain times and all that. So if you break it up against different days, you know, maybe not on a Saturday either or something like that, just because people, you know, that's normally the day they have off, they go do something. Just have it a normal day, then they'll be more prone to be happy and being there and other stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
Can you think of anything, Allison?
That sounded good, and just, you know, the structured questions, having more of like a rubric. It sounded like they kind of had a scorecard, but just something that can be measured a little bit better than just saying they're good or bad, which is hard because people, but.
Okay. So let's just wrap it up here. What is the difference between recruiting and hiring? Interesting. It just seems like maybe it's a difference in terms. Recruit is just a bit more impersonal.
And recruiting is before hiring?
The difference between recruiting and hiring.
recruiting, you basically bring the people to. You recruit them to come check it out. You recruit them to come out to the things is what I look at it as. And then hiring, of course, is saying, all right, you've passed it. Let's get you signed on now. So recruiting, I guess it gets you in the way to see if you're qualified. Maybe it's like I think about it as the Army. You have all those recruiters out there, but that's not necessarily saying that you're qualified to be in the Army. Yeah, they may have get for it, but in all reality, you're probably not the best candidate out there. I don't know.
That's a good point. What did you learn from this case about recruiting?
The recruiting's a good opportunity to go out and find the best candidates, because like I think Kyle mentioned earlier, when you say you just put a job posting online and all these people are coming to interview and apply for the job, you know, a lot of them probably aren't the best candidates. They just want a good paying job. But if you're recruiting, you personally are seeking out the very best candidates, so you know they're going to be good.
Right. I guess what I learned was I think very often these types of individuals are pretty smart, and they I think I got into my mind that whatever's on paper and textbooked and polished is usually what's going to be chosen, but I don't think that's not always the case. They look for other factors, personal factors and personality factors that might be indicative of how well you can fit the corporation. So, yeah. Anything else?
That covered it for me.
Okay. What did you learn about hiring? That's
Long, tedious process. A lot longer than I thought it was.
right.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a process. I don't know. It's got to be. I think it's got to be refined and taken serious if you want to find the best hire the best candidate. Because once you hire someone, I mean, you invest a lot of time and money into them, and if they're not good, then that sucks for you.
Right. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's going to require a bit of investment, a bit of resources, but just do it, and then you probably won't have to worry too much. There's a pretty significant fallout rate between people who are newly hired within a year, right? We learned it's about 10 to 25%. And finally, rate the discussion of today, 0 through 10.
So, I'm gonna give it a 9, I guess.
That's pretty generous. Thanks.
I'm a generous person.
Thanks. Allison?
I'll give you a 9 too.
Nice.
Yeah, well, it's my first one, so it seems really good. 9.
More people. If we can streamline this, we still haven't had one where we had everybody, so that would be better.
Allison, would you be interested in being the group leader for next week?
Yeah, sure.
Sweet.
We'll plan on
Sweet, and
that.
I'll be.
And so what is something that I did that you liked, if anything?
I thought you asked good questions and contributed well. You were able to provide a lot of insightful insights to the things that we said. So you seemed like you cared about the things that we said, and commented.
Thanks.
And didn't overkill the questions, like didn't wait for 5 minutes, and awkward silences and all that.
I agree with what's been said.
Okay. And what could I have done better? I know that the startup wasn't the best, and then I asked Kyle to help me out with the YouTube. And the pacing, some of the questions I maybe dedicated too much time. What else?
I think you pretty much there from what I saw. What you just said is basically the same thing. Just make sure you understand how to do the YouTube thing, so
Okay.
you can be the one who records it and puts it out there. So
So are you gonna be the one to post it in the discussion board then, Kyle?
no, I'm gonna send it to him, and I'm gonna send it to Joshua, and Joshua's gonna post it.
Okay, so you know where to post it then, Josh?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because it's kind of a hidden place, but as most things are in this class. But
Should I stop recording this now?
yeah.